The mid-1800s were a terrible time for Louisiana Freemasonry. Masonry in the state became split with two unyielding factions, the English-speaking Masons and the French-speaking Masons. To better understand the situation, let me give a brief introduction. The French established the Louisiana Territory. The territory was French in culture as well as language. The earliest records we presently have of Freemasonry in Louisiana is contained in the valuable Sharp Bordeaux documents. These documents tell us of a lodge established in New Orleans in 1752. New Orleans was and always has been an important U.S. shipping port. Merchants found it cheaper, simpler, and safer to transport goods down the Mississippi to New Orleans and out by ship through the Gulf of Mexico to wherever they were going. With the ships that would bring goods and tourists to the city came visiting Masons. These visitors, including the traveling Freemasons, were mostly English-speaking. But it should be noted that Freemasonry in New Orleans reflected the culture of the city. The Grand Lodge of Louisiana was created in 1812 by 5 French-speaking lodges. The Grand Lodge itself was French-speaking. This meant that New Orleans Freemasonry, in those early days, was French not only in language, but by culture. It was not unlike in operation to one of the European Grand Lodges. The English-speaking Masons who visited New Orleans didn't understand or seem to like the Freemasonry that they found in the city. By the 1820s, 30s, and later, Masonic visitors to New Orleans found lodges working in at least 3 different rituals and up to 5 different languages. Freemasonry in the United States outside New Orleans was by far English-speaking and York Rite or American Web ritual. The English-speaking Masons in New Orleans grew frustrated at what seemed to be an unmasonic deviation from what they viewed as proper Freemasonry. The Grand Lodge grew frustrated as their position was that they were trying to accommodate as many different Masons as possible. If a group of regular Freemasons speaking a particular language and working in an approved ritual sought to create a lodge, then the Grand Lodge saw no problem with issuing them a charter to work in the language and ritual of their choice. The English-speaking Masons felt that this was unacceptable. In their view, the Grand Lodge should only accommodate English-speaking Masons working in the York Rite American Web ritual, period. The Grand Lodge viewed this as self-serving and unreasonable. The two sides held firm to their positions, and this was the general heart of the conflicts in Louisiana Freemasonry. The problem for the English-speaking Masons was that they were in the minority. While the English-speaking Masons were growing in number, it was still about a 60-40 split, and that's a rough estimate. Regardless of the minority status of the English-speaking Masons, they were successful in taking over the Grand Lodge of Louisiana in 1850. From all records and accounts I have seen over the last 35 to 40 years, the French-speaking Masons seemed split regarding how they should deal with the English-speaking Masons. Because the French-speaking Masons were divided, the English-speaking Masons were able to drive a wedge between them and create 3 groups instead of 2. While the English-speaking Masons were in the minority, they became the majority against the 2 smaller French-speaking factions. It seems that the divide and conquer tactic worked. I've always had a problem trying to understand why the French-speaking Masons allowed themselves to be split into 2 in such a manner. I couldn't understand why they couldn't remain unified. Had they remained unified, the English-speaking Masons could not have taken over the Grand Lodge, at least not then, and the trouble that followed might have been avoided. So why did they do it? Why could they not come together and work together for their own best interest? That's what I would like to explore now. When we study history, it's important to understand not only what happened, but to try and understand why something happened. If we don't understand why an event happened, our understanding of the whole situation may be skewed or incomplete. We know that Freemasonry in Louisiana was divided. We understand that the French-speaking faction lost the battle, even though they were the majority. It seems that to understand why the French-speaking Masons acted as they did, we need to step outside of Freemasonry. we need to look at the city of New Orleans, its citizens and culture. In New Orleans, there is a group of people who call themselves Creoles, but quite a bit of misunderstanding exists concerning exactly who is a Creole. From my study, there are three main areas of misunderstanding about Creoles. One is that being a Creole has something to do with race. That's false. The second is that a Creole is a Creole is a Creole. In other words, the belief is that there is no difference between a Creole from New Orleans and a Creole from, say, the West Indies. That is also false. And the third misconception is that there is no cultural difference between a New Orleans Creole and a Cajun from southwest Louisiana. It is often felt that they are simply two names for the same thing. Again, that's false. In the early days of Louisiana, the term Creole simply meant someone born somewhere in Louisiana. It was used to identify native-born citizens of Louisiana. But around the 1820s, a unique and complex social structure began to develop around the Creoles. Three factors had to be present to be defined as a Creole and accepted into their social structure. First, it was felt that Louisiana was too large an area, and many outside of New Orleans did not embrace the French or Creole culture. It was felt that to be a Creole, it was needed to be born in New Orleans or an area up the river road to around the town of Vacherie. The second element was that they needed some French blood in them. Didn't matter how much, it was just required that they be part French. The third element was that they needed to have some Spanish blood. Again, it didn't matter how much Spanish blood or what else might be in the individual's heritage. All that mattered for one to be defined a Creole was to be born in New Orleans or a selected area, to have some French blood, and to have some Spanish blood. If all three of these elements were not present, then the individual was not considered a Creole. With that, the Creoles established a complex society with many unique customs. While these customs and social structures were felt to be agreeable and even necessary to the Creoles, they were often considered unacceptable to many non-Creoles. The Creoles were often felt to be morally problematic, not only because of their customs and social policies, but in how they defined themselves. Many English-speaking visitors and citizens of New Orleans found that the Creoles were too accepting, for example, of those who were not white. In fact, many were shocked when individuals were introduced as Creoles who were clearly not white. The problems with the Creoles were not limited only to the English-speaking citizens of New Orleans. Many of the French-speaking citizens were not considered Creoles and sometimes disagreed greatly with Creoles on many different things, although their attitude regarding race was usually not one of them. In fact, if we look at a breakdown of the leading New Orleans French-speaking Masons in the mid-1800s, we will see an interesting situation. The French-speaking New Orleans Masons were split into two ritualistic groups. One group was members of the French or modern Rite, and the other group members of the Scottish Rite. But I had a problem with the logic of this theory. I simply couldn't understand how simply belonging to a different Rite would explain the split or division between the two groups. Both the French and Scottish Rite New Orleans were French-speaking and somewhat similar in ritual. There was nothing in the ritual of either Rite that would explain any sort of natural division. I then began looking at those who composed the different Rites. A pattern began to develop. For the most part, the Creoles were members of the French Rite, and the non-Creole French-speaking Masons were members of the Scottish Rite. But still, there were many exceptions and some overlapping. For example, let's look at the New Orleans Scottish Rite of that time and a few of its leaders. James Fullhouse, Pierre Soulet, Claude Samery, and Charles Lafont de Laudabé were leading New Orleans Scottish Rite Masons of the mid-1800s, who were all French-speaking. But none of them were Creoles. Fullhouse and Soulet were born in France. Samery was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and Laudabé in Jamaica. But this does not mean that all the members of the New Orleans Scottish Rite were not Creoles. The Lieutenant Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of Louisiana, Thomas Wharton Collins, was from a Creole family, and there were others, but the general trend in the mid-1800s was that Creoles seemed to favor the French Rite, and non-Creole French-speaking Masons leaned towards the Scottish Rite. There are even unconfirmed reports that if one gave any thought of becoming Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana, then it was necessary to belong, at least as a plural member, to one of the French Rite lodges. At the same time, exceptions were not only common, but very often. What did become clear was that it was not the rite that one belonged to that can be seen as the source of the split between the French-speaking Masons in New Orleans. It was the cultural differences between the Creoles and non-Creoles. The Creoles simply thought and acted differently than non-Creoles, regardless of the language spoken or the Masonic rite to which they belonged. These differences were at the heart of why the French-speaking Masons in New Orleans could not always agree on a plan to defend the Grand Lodge. But if we look closer at the situation, it seems far more complicated and difficult for the French-speaking New Orleans Masons. The disagreements as to the best course of action were not limited to only the Creoles and non-Creoles. For example, of the non-Creoles, James Fullhouse and Pierre Soulet felt that the best course of action in the Scottish Rite struggle was to support the Supreme Council of Louisiana, while Claude Samery and Charles Lafont de Lauderdale chose to support the Charleston Supreme Council. New discoveries also suggest a strong split between the Creoles regarding how they felt they should respond to the English-speaking takeover of the Grand Lodge. With these additional factions within the French-speaking Masons, it became clear that their disorganization and failure to unite as a solid group resulted in their failure to properly defend the Grand Lodge or the Scottish Rite from takeover. The philosophy of divide and conquer can be seen as a main source of success for the English-speaking Masons. Of course, it is far less clear if the English-speaking Masons actually orchestrated these events or only benefited from the French being unable to agree and unify. New research and discoveries are shedding light on the activities and divisions of the Creoles in Louisiana Masonry. While the French Rite seems to have been the choice of many for the Creole Masons, it should not be assumed that they were all in lockstep with each other regarding attitudes or opinions. Most Masons in New Orleans, both Creole and non-Creole, were Roman Catholic by religion. In fact, the first Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Louisiana was the blood brother of the Bishop of New Orleans. Many of the Roman Catholic Masons were church wardens for the St. Louis Cathedral well into the mid-1800s and played a part in the selection of the parish priest. Their devotion to the Roman Catholic Church and how that might be applied to Freemasonry varied from Creole Mason to Creole Mason. We should understand, however, that the position of the Roman Catholic Church towards Freemasonry has historically been negative. Many Roman Catholic Freemasons have been excommunicated from the church solely for their Masonic membership. In New Orleans, while Freemasonry was often viewed as unacceptable for non-Masonic Creoles, it was not only acceptable, but often desirable within the Creole Masonic community. In 1850, with the takeover of the English-speaking Masons, the new Grand Lodge informed all lodges to turn in their charters to receive York Rite charters. They would begin working only in the York Rite ritual. The new Grand Lodge was intent on making its desire of an English-speaking and York Rite-only Grand Lodge a reality. 3 lodges petitioned the Supreme Council of Louisiana for relief. The Supreme Council of Louisiana granted their request and, for the first time in its history, worked a complete 33-degree system. The action of the Supreme Council of Louisiana was based on the Grand Lodges violating an 1830s agreement where the Grand Lodge agreed to provide for non-York Rite lodges within its jurisdiction. The result of that agreement was that the Grand Lodge officially recognized the York Rite, Scottish Rite, and French or Modern Rite. The Grand Lodge began issuing charters to lodges in whichever rite the lodge chose to work. It was also the time of the creation of the Chamber of Rites, where the Grand Lodge officially supervised the ritual of each of the three rites. The three lodges that petitioned the Supreme Council of Louisiana in 1850 were Etoile Polea No. 1, Los Amigos del Orden No. 5, which is today Cervantes No. 5, and Disciples of the Masonic Senate No. 5. You might notice that two of the three lodges carried the number 5, but Etoile Polea also carried the number 5 at the time of the creation of the Grand Lodge. With the change in the Grand Lodge's constitution in 1833, Etoile Polea requested and received 2 additional charters. It received the first Scottish Rite Charter and the first French or Modern Rite Charter, and it maintained its York Rite Charter. Yes, that one lodge had 3 charters and 3 sets of offices, 1 set for each rite. The 1833 Grand Lodge proceedings show the lodge meeting on 3 different nights each week, 1 for each of the rites worked. The Grand Lodge is missing all of its proceedings from that date until the early 1840s. We have no idea what happened during those lost years, but the next we see of Etoile Polea, also known as Polar Star in English, was that they possessed 1 charter, a Scottish Rite Charter, and they were meeting as a Scottish Rite Lodge. I have no idea what happened to cause them to turn in their York and French Rite Charters. Los Amigos del Orden carried the number 5 as it was the 5th lodge to receive a Scottish Rite Charter. Disciples of the Masonic Senate carried the number 5 as it was the 5th lodge to receive a French or Modern Rite Charter. This means that the Supreme Council of Louisiana took in 2 Scottish Rite Lodges and a French Rite Lodge. The English-speaking Masons were not satisfied with taking over the Grand Lodge in 1850. They sought to remove the French influence from all aspects of Louisiana Masonry. The Scottish Rite was their next target. In 1852, a consistory of the 32nd degree was created by the English-speaking Masons in New Orleans under the jurisdiction of the newly revived Charleston Supreme Council. This action caused great upset with the French-speaking Masons in New Orleans, but their upset could not overcome their divisions and the differences of opinion as to the best course of action. The Supreme Council of Louisiana became split and divided on how best to secure the future of Louisiana Freemasonry. This division resulted in half of the Supreme Council agreeing to the merger with the Charleston Council and the other half refusing to take part in such an action. In 1855, half of the active members of the Supreme Council of Louisiana signed a concordat, or agreement, with the Charleston Supreme Council, known today as the Southern Jurisdiction, and half refused to participate and walked away. As a side note, most of the ones who signed this 1855 concordat on the New Orleans side were merchants by profession. The ones who walked away refusing to sign were mostly lawyers and judges. What that means may be a matter for a later debate, but I've always found it interesting. Following the signing of the 1855 concordat, the lodges under the jurisdiction of the Supreme Council of Louisiana were told that they could no longer remain under its jurisdiction. Their choice was to return to the Grand Lodge or dissolve themselves. All 3 returned to the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge. The following year, former Grand Commander and District Court Judge James Fullhouse announced legality issues with the concordat and that the Supreme Council of Louisiana had never ceased to exist. He invited the 3 lodges formerly under their jurisdiction to return. Etoile Polea and Disciples of the Masonic Senate voted to return to the Supreme Council, but Los Amigos del Orden voted to remain under the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge. Why? No clear reason for their change in position was given. James Fullhouse was made a Mason in Los Amigos del Orden and had served as his worshipful master. He seems to have viewed the refusal of the lodge to return to the jurisdiction of the Supreme Council as a personal insult. His upset at the lodge is open in his retelling of the account in his 1857 book, Historical Inquiry into the Origins of the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite. But in his criticism of the lodge and its worshipful master, Full House makes an interesting claim. With no evidence to support or explain his statement, Full House wrote that Los Amigos del Orden had joined the Jacobite Rite. For years that charge puzzled me. What was the Jacobite Rite, and why would Full House make this charge? It made no sense to me. It didn't apply to the Scottish Rite, the French Rite, or the York Rite. It turns out that the Jacobite Rite was a pseudo-Masonic rite of questionable existence that was based on Roman Catholic membership, or at least Roman Catholic of the more radical sort. It would seem more along the lines of the Jesuits. That information was of value, but only of limited value, as I saw nothing to explain why Full House would make such a charge. I thought it might just be hard feelings and a desire to attack the lodge in some manner for the perceived insult of not returning to the Supreme Council. Discoveries then started turning up. Several years ago, a fantastic discovery was made. The old Grand Lodge of Louisiana building on St. Charles Avenue in New Orleans had been sold a number of years before. It has changed hands several times since the sale and is now a hotel. The hotel's chief engineer petitioned the lodge and was an EA when he made a most interesting discovery. Workers needed to cut a hole in the wall of one of the old lodge rooms to do some electrical work. They found wedged in the wall an old Jesuit communion press from around the 1800s. This was a hand press to form and make communion wafers for Roman Catholics. How in the world did it get there? Who put it there? And why was it put there? No one had the slightest idea, and no records exist to explain the find. On its own, the discovery of the Jesuit communion press gives us more questions than answers. But it was not the only interesting discovery made. From its creation in 1842, Los Amigos del Orden was a Spanish-speaking lodge. In 1883, it merged with another Spanish-speaking lodge, Silencio, to create Cervantes No. 5. Cervantes remained a Spanish-speaking lodge for about another 125 years. Around 2010, the lodge was having trouble finding Spanish-speaking officers and requested permission from the Grand Lodge to work in English until it could fill all its chairs with Spanish-speaking members. A call was put out to non-Spanish-speaking Masons to plural with this lodge in order to save it. I was one of the Masons who answered this call and had the honor of serving as worshipful master of Cervantes in 2018. Cervantes has always been known as having a unique nature, custom, and ritual. An effort was made to translate many of its early documents and records from Spanish into English. When this was completed, a very surprising discovery was made. When one sought to join Cervantes in his Spanish-speaking days, a clear and open attempt was made in the ritual to identify candidates of the Roman Catholic faith. On its own, this raised more than a few eyebrows, as any question of a candidate's specific religious faith was not allowed. But for a researcher, it was like finding gold. The act of Cervantes seeking to identify Roman Catholic candidates could seem to support the charge by James Full House that Los Amigos del Orden, the original name of Cervantes, had joined the Jacobite Rite. It's certainly not clear proof, but it is very interesting. But what would it have meant if Los Amigos del Orden had joined something known as the Jacobite Rite, even if only in philosophy? It could mean that the lodge had taken a decidedly Roman Catholic turn in its attitude, but it may also have meant that it was taking a clear Creole side in the Masonic war that existed in the state. Records show that just following the 1850 takeover of the Grand Lodge, a number of new members came to a few of the older lodges from influential Creole families. These were Roman Catholic families. With this, the discovery of the Jesuit communion press, hidden away in the lodge wall, creates an even more complex picture. If the Creoles were determined to reclaim the Grand Lodge, with maybe even more of a Catholic flavor, then it does seem, at least, this faction of them was organizing and developing a strategy to accomplish their aims with the Grand Lodge. But things soon changed in an unexpected and unfortunate way for both sides. In 1853 and 1854, yellow fever epidemics hit New Orleans, killing nearly 8,000. The entire Grand Lodge line from Grand Master to Grand Junior Warden died due to this epidemic. This was the English-speaking leadership, but it also killed many of the leading Creole Freemasons, including newly raised Gabriel or me, a member of Perfect Union Lodge No. 1 and son of Creole leader Valcour or me, who is reported to have been one of the wealthiest men in America and a most enigmatic figure. Following his son's death, a crushed Valcour is reported to have retreated from the world. All sides basically had their legs kicked out from under them. The Grand Lodge's senior past Grand Master, John Henry Holland, stepped up and with questionable authority assumed control of the Grand Lodge with the goal of bringing order to the deeply divided and broken Louisiana Masonry. It was only partly successful. While neither side could claim total success, enough of a compromise was created to allow the factions to continue to exist and maybe fight another day. Today, there are significant holes in our understanding of many aspects of early Louisiana Freemasonry, but light is coming into the dark corners that is our history. Discoveries are being made far more quickly than expected. Things that we have long believed to be facts in our history are now being proven to be completely incorrect. Many bits of our history are held as truth because they are emotionally accepted rather than proven by the evidence. We believe some things merely because we want to believe them or because the brother who brought us into Masonry told us something was so, and we accepted it as fact with no challenge. If we care about Louisiana Freemasonry or any aspect of Freemasonry anywhere in the world, then it is time that we stop and take a reality check. Men created Freemasonry. Men created it with all our talents and flaws. And guess what? We are not perfect. We all make mistakes. Our ego may not like hearing it, but it's true. Freemasonry is an inspired system of moral philosophy that can help anyone achieve a more spiritual, useful, and happy life. All we need do is to take advantage of what it has to offer. The history of Louisiana Freemasonry is being rediscovered. The work must continue. Bit by bit, we are uncovering our past. If we attempt to edit our history, as was clearly done in the past, then we are neither honest with ourselves nor following the path of the enlightened. It does not matter if we rejoice in our history, dislike it, or wish to be something else. We are who we are. I am proud to be both a Louisiana Freemason and a Scottish Rite Mason because I understand who and what we are. Even if we are not quite there yet, I know enough of the past to know how important we are to the whole of our order. I want to see us continue to grow in light so that our lodges can return to their unique place in the new age of enlightenment. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to us. Please pay a visit to the Cornerstone Book Publishers website at cornerstonepublishers.com for outstanding Masonic education. See you next time.